I oversee the Tax Institute. That is H&R Block's Center of Tax Expertise. So we're the group that studies all the tax law changes and then provides those updates out to the operational arms of our company. So helping the training teams get that information out to our frontline tax preparers, helping the software teams program those changes into our programs. And of course, then we also provide direct support to our tax preparers as they're writing tax returns, want to understand how to apply the rules in a given situation. We can help interpret the laws and give them the basis and the foundation for it from there. And then, of course, the other thing that means is that we see throughout the tax season all the changes that are coming in and where are people really struggling. So it gives us a very real-time view of the questions that people have as they're dealing with their taxes. And then additionally, one other thing that we are responsible for is managing the relationship with the Internal Revenue Service and the of revenue. So we've been working very closely throughout this time right now, just to try to help answer questions and ensure as much smooth operations as we can. So jumping into it, there have been a lot of changes recently for both individuals and small businesses. And the big thing right off is that there's been a tax deadline extension. This is so unprecedented. We all know April 15th is the deadline, and sometimes that will morph a little bit. If April 15th falls on a Saturday, it'll then flow to the 17th if it's a Monday and those kinds of things. But we've always been of the belief that there's no way to change that deadline. It's set in law. And then, of course, this year that completely got changed. So the filing deadline was extended to July 15th. And with it, then the payment due dates also got changed to July 15th. And that's both for individuals, self-employed, and corporations. One of the real key things there is that many self-employed and businesses pay estimated taxes throughout the year, on the quarter. And so first and second quarterly estimated payments are also postponed until July 15th. So that's giving people a lot of room, of course, for those who need to stay home because of health issues, for those who are just focused on other things and don't have the time to file their taxes, and for those that are waiting on documents or things like that. So really great to have extra time to file the taxes and to also pay the taxes if needed. So one of the questions that we're getting is, should you wait? And the answer is really based on what your situation is. So if you're expecting a tax refund, then no, don't wait, because the IRS is still processing refunds. So you wouldn't want to wait because you're going to want that money. And if you're expecting to pay, then you don't have to pay until July 15th. What I would recommend is that you go ahead possible to calculate your tax return so that you know what your situation is, and then from there you can determine. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that you can file your tax return even if you owe money and set your due date, set your payment date 15th. So for people that just like to get it done, get it out of the way, focus on other things, if you've got all your documents, if you've got everything that you need, you can go ahead and file your taxes and then deal with paying it later. And that also lets you know how much do you owe and gives you time to prepare for it. There's a lot of different ways for people to file their taxes. You can file online, do it yourself. You can work virtually with a tax preparer. There's been a lot of changes in the business models. And then, of course, there's a lot of tax preparers that are still working either with drop-off or, very tight scheduled hours. So there's a lot of ways to get help, to get your questions answered, and to find out the thing that's best for you. Now, there's still the October 15th filing extension. And so for people who used to need more time come April 15th, you used to file your extension then, and that would give you 6 months until October 15th. Now what that means is if you still don't feel like you can get your taxes filed by July 15th, you can file an extension, and then you can have until October 15th to file your taxes. But what's important to know there is that an extension to file is not an extension to pay. So you'll still need to know what you're expecting your taxes to be, thereabouts. And then if you're filing an extension on July 15th, you'll send in a payment as well if you're owing money, and that will just give you a few more months to get your actual tax return calculated and submitted. The other thing that's important to know is that the states were a little bit, slow because they always follow federal. And so now the state deadlines and payment deadlines have also mapped to the federal deadlines. And so for Kansas, Missouri, and the city of Kansas City, Missouri, all of those deadlines for both filing and payments have also extended until July 15th. So you've got that extra time if you need it, and if you don't need it, then don't wait. What I would highlight is that despite the fact that the IRS has really, had to close down a lot of their processing centers, what that means is that they don't have people that are available to answer the phones or process paper returns. But if you are able to submit your return electronically, it doesn't require human intervention. And it's, we're seeing those returns are processing through just fine, and they're getting passed on to the states just fine. And returns are, the refunds are actually getting funded, within 21 days for a normal electronically filed return. So good news in that regard for anybody that's got a normal filing obligation. So now I'm just going to transition a little bit into talking about the actual CARES Act. And, every legislation has to have a good acronym. So what this stands for is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, so the CARES Act. It was signed into law on March 27th, which, that was only a month ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago already because so much has happened. And the two really key components of that were stimulus payments and small business programs. So we're going to jump into that in a little bit more detail. And we're going to start the stimulus payments. So those are formally known as economic impact payments. And we're just referring to them as stimulus payments here in this discussion. Basically, they're available to more than 90% of adult Americans, and they're available now through the end of next filing season, through April 2021. Very high level, it means $1,200 per person. It's a function of your income and family size. There's phase outs starting at $75,000 if you're a single filer, $150,000 if you're married filing joint, plus $500 per child under age 17 who qualifies for the child tax credit. It's being calculated on your 2019 return if you got that filed before all of this happened. And if not, the IRS was going back to the 2018 return to look at the household income and number of dependents in the household to calculate those credits. H&R Block has a calculator on its website, hrblock.com, and you can kind of estimate what you think you'd be eligible for with regards to the stimulus. You can either get that stimulus payment direct deposited or mailed by check, depending on how you received your refund on your tax return. That's what the IRS is using to determine how to send out that stimulus payment. For those who haven't yet gotten stimulus payment. And look, how is the IRS planning to send it? So what information does it have? And when was it scheduled to be sent if it hasn't been sent yet? If you're scheduled to receive a check and it hasn't gone out yet, you have an opportunity to go in, put in your banking information, and then the IRS can send that by direct deposit. So that would help expedite it for some people who are staged to get a check but have a bank account. That will help them get that faster. Let me see, I'm just checking my notes to see if there's anything else here. Last week, the IRS was able to send out stimulus payments for the Social Security and Railroad Retirement Benefits recipients, and that ended up being, actually, I forget, it was just an enormous payments that went out. After this, they're going to be payments for SSI and VA recipients. And one of the real issues that you may or may not have been hearing about in the news here is that the IRS only knows about you if you file a tax return. So they've been working with the other agencies, Social Security, VA, and such, to find out who are other federal benefits recipients in order to be able to send stimulus money to them without requiring them to file a tax return. But what that means is that, for example, if somebody is paying for the care of a dependent child, IRS doesn't know about that. So there's a limited opportunity to go into the IRS website, the Free File site, and put in additional information about your dependent children in order to get that information in there. And if you've already received your payment, but you didn't get all of the money that you were supposed to, you'll be able to reconcile that on next year's tax return and be eligible for a little bit more stimulus money then. Conversely, we've gotten a lot of questions about, oh gosh, IRS used my 2018 information and I think I got more money than I was entitled to based on the formulas. Do I have to pay that back? And the good news there is that no, you don't have to pay that back. And so, that can also take some pressure off and give people some relief. If you got more money, but your family size changed, you're okay. You don't have to pay that back. And if you didn't get what you were entitled to, you'll be able to claim that on next year's return. The other challenge that they're trying to solve for is how to reach other people who don't typically file a tax return, but they aren't otherwise reachable through these benefits programs. And that's going to be an ongoing effort. If you know of somebody in this situation, if you've got questions about this, for people who otherwise wouldn't know about this program, they can go onto the IRS website, to the Free File Alliance, and for free, they can enter in either a very simple return or what we're referring to as a $0 return to get their information, get their updated address, banking information, and get registered so that they can get that stimulus payment that they most likely need very badly right now. So now I'm going to shift a little bit, and I'm going to talk about the stimulus programs for small businesses. And this has been probably super confusing if you're a small business owner or self-employed, trying to understand what all the programs are that are available and then how to tap into them. And there's certainly just been a ton of headlines about what is going on with these programs. So there's 4 key programs. There's the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a loan. There's the Employee Retention Credit, which is a credit against your payroll taxes. There's the Payroll Tax Postponement, which allows you to hold off on paying payroll taxes. And then there's the Economic Impact Disaster Loans. And that the EID loans have always been available, but now with these other acts, there's been some enhancements to that program. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about 3 different business scenarios and how they might be able to take advantage of these different programs, just to help make it a little bit more relevant or relatable. So we're going to have the example of a restaurant owner with 10 employees, a salon owner who's just a sole proprietor with no employees, and then transportation services, so typically like an Uber driver, and how it works for them. I just saw a question that come in that says, are these available for not-for-profits as well? And you know, I need to double check that. So thank you for asking that question. And if I'm not able to answer that right now, we will follow back up on that as well. So, example of Mary's restaurant. She's an S Corp. She's got 10 employees. Her average monthly employee payroll is $25,000. Her annual wages for herself are $60,000. And her situation is that she had to shut down her restaurant based on the order by the state government that just says, you know, everybody needs to shut down, but she really wants to seek options to help retain her employees and sustain her business. And so in this situation, there's programs that she could apply for. There's the Paycheck Protection Program, and based on her wages, she'd be eligible for up to $75,000 loan with the forgiveness opportunity, you know, provided that she meets those requirements and retains her employees. There's the employee retention credit of $50,000. The payroll tax postponement, which basically allows her to defer the employer portion of Social Security tax for employees. That includes that 6.2% of Social Security wages from March 27th, when the act went into effect, until the end of the year. The economic impact disaster loans, which that's a $10,000 grant, even if you don't get approved for the loan, if they front the $10,000, that's as a grant. There's bonus relief if in prior years she had purchased equipment that she was depreciating over time. She could go back and amend her return and accelerate that depreciation, take it all at once, which would give her some cash flow relief. And then she personally would be eligible for the $1,200 stimulus payment, because as you recall, that's up to $75,000 as a single filer, and she's making $60,000, so she's eligible for that. So I know I kind of went through that a little bit fast, and I'm just reviewing my loans here. One thing I wanted to talk about, just to highlight, is for the employee retention credit, she would be able to take a credit on her tax return of up to 50% of the first $10,000 wages, so $5,000 per employee. She's got 10 employees, which is why she would be able to take up to $50,000 credit on her current tax return. So that's kind of a nice benefit, depending on, but that's depending on the fact that she's got employees. So not everybody is able to take that, just those that are that have employees. So the scenario is Joe's salon, and I don't know about anybody else, but I'm really hoping that the salons get to reopen quickly, because I could sure use a touch-up here. So Joe's salon is a sole proprietor, so no employees, no monthly payroll, but his income annually is $60,000. He was forced to close his salon because of the stay-at-home order, and he hopes to be able to reopen as soon as it's lifted so that he can continue paying his rent and his monthly expenses. And oh, by the way, he also has some federal student loans that he's worried about. So the programs that he would be able to apply for, the Paycheck Protection Program, and here, he'd be eligible for $12,500 loan, which again, if he meets the requirements, that would be forgiven. He doesn't have any employees, so the employee retention credit doesn't apply to him. Because he pays payroll tax on himself, he can defer a portion of his self-employment, so he's eligible for that. He could apply for the economic impact disaster loans and get up to $10,000 grant. Also now, because he's self-employed, he's able to take unemployment for the first time. Typically, unemployment has only been available for people who work for somebody else, for employees. But what really changed in this CARES Act is the expanded unemployment benefits and making it available for self-employed. And so that would be $600 a week at the federal level, plus half the average weekly state unemployment benefits. So this is new news for the self-employed, very, very helpful and important. One thing I would say is that we were hearing a lot of noise and confusion about, what's happening at the states, because people were trying to apply for the unemployment and getting rejected or denied and things like that. And basically, the states needed a little bit of time to update their unemployment systems, because this is such a big change from however it's happened before, that they needed to get their systems updated, and it took them a little bit of time. And then typically what needs to happen is, it's a little bit of a confusing process, but you would apply, get denied, and then that takes you to the next level. So it will take a few weeks for self-employed people to actually be able to get through the process and start receiving money. But just remember, you are eligible, you are entitled. Be patient and know that it's going to take a little bit of time for that to actually come through. Then there was also the federal student loans relief, and that's an automatic deferral for your federal loans until September 30th. If the loans are through private lenders, you're going to need to contact the lenders and see what kinds of things that they're offering. But generally, a lot of them are offering assistance. And again, Joe, his annual wages are $60,000, so he's eligible for that stimulus payment as well. And so there's a lot of benefit, a lot of programs and assistance for him. And then moving on, the last scenario, Kevin's transportation service. So here, Kevin is an Uber driver. He's a sole proprietor, so no employees, no monthly payroll, and he makes about $40,000 a year. So he's not driving for Uber because of the stay-at-home order that went into effect, but he's expecting to start driving again soon, and he really needs some cash in the meantime to help cover his living expenses. So the programs that he'd be able to apply for, the Paycheck Protection Program, again, 2.5 times, the average monthly payroll. So for him, that would be $8,333. And I guess one of the other things that I meant to mention is that this is the particular program that was getting a lot of headlines. The first tranche of funding went out and they went through it very, very quickly. The second tranche of funding got approved and started getting dispersed on Monday. We understand that it's moving a little bit slower. They're really trying to target small businesses. There was a lot of bad press about large businesses that were applying for it. Some of those companies are actually returning the funds, realizing that it wasn't intended for them. And they're also really trying to target the small businesses, those that are the most in need. So they're moving a little bit slower this time, getting through it. And we'll see how long the funding holds out on that. But, anybody that is eligible and wants to take advantage of this, we would say absolutely, go ahead and apply. And also apply for the economic impact disaster loan. to see which one you'd be able to get. And then for the payroll tax postponement, again, what this would mean for Kevin is that he's not going to have to pay his self-employment portion until he starts earning income again. He would also be eligible for the expanded unemployment. And I just can't reiterate how unprecedented this is and how beneficial it is for people to, who are self-employed, to be able to take advantage of this. And then also he would get the stimulus payment of $1,200 because he's well under the threshold. So there's some help and assistance coming for him as well. And now, just to kind of take a step back, the demand federal as well as for private lenders has just been so high, and there's just a lot of quick adaptation. I mean, we saw having the legislation signed to actually issuing incredible amounts, 80 million stimulus payments on April 14th, April 15th. So that was in 2 weeks, really unprecedented. And, sure, of course, there were some things that went awry. The states are experiencing this as well as they're ramping up and adapting. The lenders that are now helping, to funnel the applications for these different payroll programs are, each, kind of learning what are the rules and how to apply them. And so people are having different experiences as they're going through the application processes, but that's to be expected because everything is happening so quickly. So what we would really recommend is that, for small business owners, if you're not sure, get some help with this. Because having somebody else that can kind of hold your hand and walk you through it is going to make sure they're taking full advantage, and it's also going to, make it seem a little less overwhelming as you're navigating through all the different programs. We had received a number of FAQs, but what I want to do is just stop for a minute and check in at the chat level and see if there's any questions that have come in, and if not, we'll come back here and drop out for a minute, but I just want to see what questions have come in. And the only question that's come in so far is are programs available for the not-for-profits? And I apologize, I'm just going to have to get back to you on that one. I think they are. I just have confirmation on that for sure. So back to the questions. So can small businesses get help if they're part-time? And the answer is yes. Actually, I'm sorry. Oh, okay, so yes, we just got back confirmation. Thank you so much. Yes, the nonprofits are eligible for any of the programs that they qualify for, if that makes sense. So yes, nonprofits absolutely can apply. More specifically, the ERCTP programs, as a not-for-profit, we've applied successfully for PPP, still waiting to hear back. Sorry. Yeah, waiting to hear back on the EIDL. Basically, what we're hearing on that is that these this application process is a lot slower, and so not surprised that you're still waiting to hear on that. They weren't as as far as the PPP versus the EIDL, kind of different processes for applying, and they are just taking longer. Secondly, we have a 19-year-old college student Are they receiving any of the stimulus money? Um, so that depends. And the answer is likely not. The basic rules are, if you claimed them on your tax return because they're 19, you weren't able to claim them for the child tax credit. So that's how they were determining if you would get money for them on your tax return. Now, the little caveat is if they had filed their own tax return, they might be getting stimulus payment for that. But based on the way that you've framed up the question, I'm thinking likely not. If they're a college student, you're probably still paying for them. Okay, next. Okay, so back to the uh, yeah, no, he didn't file a tax return, so no, he won't be getting any stimulus payments. Sorry about that. What programs are available to small businesses that were set up to start operating mid-March? Food truck was closed due to winter and had events scheduled, and most have canceled. So yeah, this kind of falls under the category of seasonal businesses, and basically what the guidance is there is that you would look at your either prior year earnings, in that seasonal period of what you would have earned, and then that can be the basis for your estimated payroll during that period or your estimated earnings if you don't have that look back period. So a lot of businesses are impacted because they're seasonal, and there is a provision in there for being able to look at what your seasonal earnings would have been to use that as the basis for um, for the application. Um, Let me see. Next question. Can employees? Yeah. So if your employees are part time, yes, you can get help, and then you just um, on what your average payroll is, and that proportion of it. Do self-employed businesses qualify for getting help as a small business? And yes, absolutely. We've gone through a couple of those examples of what they would be eligible for. And because you don't have employees, then you're just not eligible for the employee retention credit. One other, and this may be a little bit of a nuance, but one other thing is that if you have a net operating loss from this year, you can then carry it back now 5 years. So in prior years, if you had a good year, you'd be able to carry back some of that loss, which would then get you some money back from those prior years. That's not a quick solution because you have to file an amended return. Amended returns are filed on paper, so it's going to take a while, for the IRS to process those. But it's a good thing to keep in mind because I think a lot of companies are going to be experiencing losses this year. And if you had prior years with good years, being able to carry that loss back may be something that is helpful to you. Let me see. I worked for a small business company. How would I be able to get any relief? And so basically here, anybody who lost their job due to coronavirus will likely be eligible for unemployment benefits. This includes full-time, part-time, self-employed, gig workers, even people with a limited work history. So you should definitely go ahead and apply with the state, and you'll need to meet the other rules, but you should be eligible regardless. The next question: can a small business be approved for a loan under the Paycheck Protection Program, even if one employee is at home collecting unemployment? And the whole point of the PPP was to help businesses retain their employees. So if you lay off employees, then the forgiveness of the loan is likely to be impacted. That was one of the conditions, is as long as you retain employees, then that loan will be forgiven. So if you are laying off employees, then that will impact that forgiveness. And then what can make my business ineligible for getting a loan under the paycheck program? And this kind of seems self-evident, but if you are operating an illegal business, obviously you wouldn't be eligible for it then. If you are using it to cover the costs of household employees or nannies or housekeepers, it's not available for that. And if you have current criminal charges or convictions, or if you've defaulted on an SBA loan, those would also make you ineligible. So important to just, understand the rules around it, but people can help you kind of navigate through that. We'd also seen a question where somebody had a conviction from a long time ago, and it's within the last 5 years. So that ultimately, depending on the timing of when there was the conviction, would help impact what you'd be eligible for. And so I'm going to just take another pause, see if there's any other questions coming in. Yes, there is a recording of this webinar, and it will be available at a later time. So sorry that you were having some technical issues, but you'll be able to hear this later. One of the things that we just announced today, and I'm so proud, is that H&R Block announced that we're going to be supporting communities, not just in Kansas City, but nationwide, to thank our frontline workers with free tax preparation. So we have a product that's called Tax Pro Go. It's completely virtual, so people can upload their tax documents and then just hand it off to an expert to do their taxes. So completely no contact. And we're going to do this free for all police, firefighters, EMTs, and healthcare professionals for the month of May. So if that applies to you or somebody in your family or your network, please make sure that they hear about this. And you can get more information on hrblock.com/frontline. With that, I am just going to pause for another minute to see if there's any further questions. But if not, just want to reiterate, you'll be able to get the recording of this on the KC Chamber. They'll be sending out some information. It's on a YouTube channel. I really just, thank you all for coming and attending the webinar today. I hope that you and your families are staying safe. And I know that together we're going to come through this. We're going to come through this stronger and, better than before. I absolutely believe that. We're here to help. If there's anything else that we can do to help navigate these difficult times, H&R Block is here for you. Thank you for your time. So grateful for your attention today. And please have a great day.
Thank you so much, Kathy. It was a great presentation. It really was. And we will have this up on our YouTube channel. I put that link in our chat. It typically takes about a day for us to process and clean up the video. So you can expect tomorrow to see that video on YouTube, and I'll be sure to send that to you, Kathy, as well as you, Susan. And if anybody has any questions, we do have multiple resources on our website. It's the KC Chamber Knowledge Hub. So just our main page there, you'll be able to see a banner which takes you to it. Again, if anyone has any questions, please just feel free to email them to me and I'll be able to pass them on to Kathy. Thank you, everyone.